Okay, the NFL Week 5 Power Rankings. So number 10, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers down 2 spots. They just took a huge loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, and like I've said, this time it was their defense who was really good the first 3 weeks, but was really bad versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Could not stop them at all. And their offense actually played pretty well after 3 bad weeks of offense. Their offense against the Chiefs actually played pretty well, scored 31 points, but could be more consistent. Like both offense and defense need to play together. And Tampa Bay has been falling so far, and they still have the division, but they gotta fix a few things, especially on offense. And number 9, I have the Chargers up 1 spot. Good bounce back game for them against for them against the Texans. And Austin Eckler had a great game. Justin Herbert had a great game. The defense for the first half had a great game, but in the second half they allowed Texans to get back in. Defense allowed a few scores, and their offense couldn't score until the final drive. Um, Definitely has some talent if they didn't let up near the end. Number 8, I have the LA Rams down 4 spots. They took a huge blowout loss to the 49ers, and LA has just got to find something, solve some things. Their defense looked all right, but it's their offense. Matthew Stafford keeps throwing picks, and they cannot throw deep. Cooper Kupp and Higbee's their whole offense, and they just have to find an offensive rhythm. Then number 7, I have the Cincinnati Bengals up 2 spots. Um, Definitely a good win over the Dolphins, and Joe Burrow had a good game, and the offensive line played really, really well. And wide receivers had a good game. Their offense looked a lot more in sync, and like I said, offensive line had a huge bounce back game. However, their run game still isn't good, and their defense has been really good so far. And that's once they get the run game figured out, I think they can be back to the 2021 Cincinnati Bengals and definitely be a more threat once they get their run game figured out. Then number 6 out the Miami Dolphins. Now, 3 spots. They lost to the Cincinnati Bengals. It wasn't a pretty loss for them. And Tua got injured, and now they're starting Bridgewater. Bridgewater isn't the worst, and they play against the Jets next week, but isn't greatest. And Tyreek Hill still had a great game. Jalen Waddle is still a great wide receiver in their defense. Um, it's been all right in terms of point scoring, but they could cut down on their yardage. And definitely, this next couple of games, Tua's definitely going to tell how good their team is, and yeah, I still have them at 6. Number 5, at the Baltimore Ravens, not going down. They had a 20-3 lead entering halftime against the Bills, and then they choked it away. And they just had to figure out how to close out game. Lamar Jackson's having an MVP season in the first half. The defense was playing well, really well against the great Buffalo Bills offense, but then in the second half they called the collapse and they couldn't score a point. And Buffalo Bills came out. So game they really should have won. Baltimore, even though 2-2, they look a lot better. But man, they just have to figure out how to close out games. The number 4, at the Green Bay Packers, up 3 spots. Don't think they're really that good at number 4. It's just the other teams aren't that good either. And they had a good game versus the Patriots. Definitely a lot closer than it should have been. Their defense allowed 24 points to Blaine Zappi, and offense is still out of rhythm. Their offense is inconsistent, and I see the Packers as definitely frauds. Offense been inconsistent. Their defense didn't play great against the Patriots. Their special teams have been pretty good. And their defense did stop the Patriots in overtime, but their offense has not looked good. The Bucs offense hasn't looked great, even with a great QB. Number 3, at the Kansas City Chiefs, up 3 spots. Offense looked great against the Buccaneers. Buccaneers defense has been very good so far, but Kansas City Chiefs just could not be stopped. Travis Kelce had a great game. Offensive line did much better, and their defense didn't have the greatest game against the Bucs, but they were good enough. They're good enough to win the game, and their defense definitely a weak spot, but they have been playing much better. In their offense, a great bounce back game for the Chiefs after taking a loss to the Colts. Then number 2, Buffalo Bills haven't moved yet. Definitely, they were behind 20-3 in the first half. The offense could not get going, and their defense couldn't stop Lamar Jackson. But in the second half, everything came together, and the offense managed to score a last-second field goal. Their defense stopped Baltimore from scoring any points, and Buffalo Bills, the injuries are definitely taking a toll as they look very inconsistent right now. But they definitely have good depth, and when healthy, they can be a Super Bowl contender. But they just have to get healthy. And then this week, no team dropped out. Not really because the team won, but because The gap between like the elite and the playoff bubbles is very thin this year. A lot of 3-1, 2-2 teams, and that's why it's hard to determine who goes in the top 10. Obviously, stuff. Philadelphia Eagles are number one, the last undefeated team. Definitely not a pretty game against the Jaguars. It was raining, but Jalen Hurts threw a pick six on the first drive, and they were behind 14-0, and they still won. Another great run game performance. And I think this Eagles have looked really, really well, especially in offense, and their defense has been playing a lot better as of late. And I think they can very well be a Super Bowl contender if they beat a quality opponent, which they really haven't done yet, and that's really the only knock on it. But they're still the only undefeated team and have looked really, really good so far. So there you have it, my NFL Week 5 power rankings.